Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's panel discussion on vegan activism across Asia and North Africa. My name is Leila Dehkan. I'm an animal rescuer, a social justice activist, and a vegan nutritionist. I'm actually originally from Iran, but I grew up in Austria and currently I live in the UK. So when I went vegan, I was living in the West. And although I have connected with vegans in Iran, I don't claim to know much about vegan activism in Iran. However, as vegans, we keep talking about a vegan world. So if that is our goal, then all of us, no matter where we live, which culture and country we are from, we need to work together. We need to support each other to make this happen, right? So hopefully today's panel discussion will help us to get a step closer to a vegan world. And before we get started, I want to say that, if you have any questions, please type them into the comment box. And either I bring them up, during the discussion or at the end. Now, today I'm joined by three members of Animal Alliance Asia: Ellie from Japan, Angel from Hong Kong, Alia from Pakistan, and we also have Si Mohammed from Morocco with us. Usually I introduce the panelists in an alphabetical order, but today I'm kind of doing it in a geographical order. I hope it makes sense. I start from Japan and then move on. So let's start with Ellie. Ellie, you're the co-founder of Animal Alliance Asia. And if I understand correctly, your mission is to build an animal justice movement in Asia. And I think that is a very bold mission, considering that there are actually over 40 countries in Asia. So just tell us, how did the whole thing started? Whose idea was it? How many countries are involved in the movement at the moment?
Sure. Thank you very much for the introduction, Leila. So yes, as you just introduced, Angel on the panel, and myself, we co-founded Animal Alliance Asia in 2019. So it was 2 years ago. And the idea basically sprang up in my head when I attended the International Animal Rights Conference in Luxembourg in 2018, because I really enjoyed the experience, and it was so nice that activists across Europe and beyond were in one place and learned all kinds of skills together to become better activists. And I thought it would be really nice if we had something like this for Asian activists as well. So that's when the idea came in to my head. And over time, I heard very similar stories and frustrations from fellow activists in Asia, where they thought that their voices and experiences were not very represented enough in the current animal justice movement that's quite Eurocentric, the mainstream movement at the moment. So yeah, Angela and I discussed this, and we decided to be an initiative to provide a safe space for activists in Asia to come together and learn skills together. So that's how it all started. And yeah, basically, when I'm actually based in the UK as well. But whenever I went back home to Japan, I tried some forms of activism, and I soon realized that what works in the West don't necessarily work as well in Japan because of the cultural differences. So much complexity in a diverse culture within Japan, and I heard similar stories from other activists in Asia as well. So we wanted to be a space where we can actually make the movement grow from within Asia that's culturally appropriate and culturally relevant. So that's how we all started. At the moment, we have members from Indonesia, Hong Kong, Japan, Pakistan, India, Myanmar, and Vietnam, and also Taiwan. We've had speakers from China, Thailand, Palestine as well. And last year, when we had the conference, we had participants, over 1,000 participants actually cumulative, from over 50 countries attended our conference. Yes, and we would like to expand our members to China as well, because obviously that's a very big country in Asia. And also we want to look at Central Asia in the near future as well. That's what we're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really amazing. So many, attendance at the conference, and so many different countries. And I know we keep saying Asia, but Asia is such a big continent. And even when we just talk about like China and Japan, different cultures, different mindsets, so it's not the same. And I think that's why I say it's a bold mission to want to actually create something in the continent, really. But I admire that. So was it easy to find members, Ali?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It was very difficult at the beginning to find each other because of the reason I stated earlier. Our voices and experiences are not represented enough in the movement. So we couldn't really find each other at the beginning, but over time, thanks to our country reps who have then connected us with their local network, we have found more people locally. So now we're expanding more. Thanks.
Thank you. Angel, you're based in Hong Kong, and Ellie mentioned that you both came together to create it. So did you know each other beforehand? And you did. And how do you actually how can people find you? I mean, in general, not now, obviously, it's, you're doing a panel discussion, so people just go to your website. But beforehand, how were people finding you?
Thanks for your question, Leila. Do you mean how... I guess how would people?
Yes, how people. I mean, initially when you started the movement, how did people actually find you?
I see. I started creating educational social media content in both Chinese and English, I think back in 2018. The reason being, at that time, quickly before, after I became vegan, I saw that there's a relative lack of content in Chinese or Cantonese, which is the dialect that we speak in Hong Kong. So I just wanted to create something to support the community. It's after a while, since I've been creating that content, that Ellie and I connected online, because at that time I was actually in London doing my degree. So we met up and we talked about the idea of starting AAA or Animal Alliance Asia. And the rest is history. But before I was part of Animal Alliance Asia, I was devoting a lot of my time just creating content and trying to spread awareness in my part of, my hometown, Hong Kong, China, or that part of Asia.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Elia? How did you find Elia and Angel?
I was actually scrolling through Instagram and I was looking for different pages to follow for vegan activists. And I stumbled upon a post that said that they're looking for representatives in Asia. And then just messaged them. And then Ellie and I connected over Instagram. So it was pretty interesting.
Yes, it sounds very interesting. And, you see the importance of actually social media when it comes to activism. I know social media is not always a good thing, but I think when it comes to vegan activism, it is important. And even these virtual events, it actually allows us to connect with each other and share ideas. So it's really good. Now, Simo, I want to turn to you next. You actually founded the Veg Fest Morocco. Now tell us, how did that start? And were you, the only one who was involved?
Thank you so much for having me here at this global Veg Fest to represent North Africa. But for Veg Fest Morocco, I was founded this event just to bring together Moroccan and foreigners lives in Morocco in one activity. So I start to connect my friends, speakers from America, Spain, Switzerland, to even though come from their money. So because the festival starts without any financial support, so I make it just my own money because I believe animal rights activists. It's very important. It's my lifestyle. So I start to make these events in since 2 years. 2 years. After that, I try to move it in large city like Casablanca in Morocco. So, but I found it is very expensive there because so I try to come back in Fez. I try to organize second edition, but it's postponed by due pandemic. I invited a lot of speakers from Asia, for example, Palestine, Lebanon, Kuwait, and India. But it's all of them postponed. But I try to make it after the online. So we make it online. So after that, it's for 4 days. 1 day for Arabic activists to bring them for the first one together to talk about futures in MENA region and something like that. So second one just for second day just for French speakers, because French is very common second language in Morocco. And the third day is just for international speakers. We are invited you, Dr. Leila, and Dr. Melanie Joy, and Tim Barford, or for example, Aisha, coordinator of Animal Safe. So it was a very important event for us. So, and we are concludes just for vegan artists. So by the way, we have been chosen as the best global event award by VegFest UK. So it's this award is very important for us. So that's why we are now working to make next VegFest just online. We are focused for two things. First day will be just to focus about activists, African activists, because each of them have different story, because Africa is very continent, is very poor continent. It's very difficult to raise awareness there. So we will focus about activists in Africa. And the second day for international speakers like last year's, but we will honoring a person who she give lots of things to service animal in Africa. So she give her life to work with the animals. She is international and famous speakers. If you can you guess she is?
No, I can't.
She is Jane Goddard. Yes. So we'll be next. I think it's November or December. So just we are focused on that. Hope have good news. We have accepted by Veg Fund to support these events. So that's it.
That's excellent. I really find it always interesting and inspiring to hear the origin story of an organization or movement. It is very inspiring, and as I said, if we want a vegan world, we all need to work together. Each country needs to do their own, activism. So thank you for sharing. Now, next, I want to turn to the term vegan. Now, this is an English word, obviously, and it was coined by Donald Watson in 1945. And it really comes from the word vegetarian. And I know in Iran, people say vegan, well, they just pronounce it differently. They say vegan, which is more like a German pronunciation as well. And they also have a Farsi word for vegan, but the literal translation would be like an absolute plant eater. So, the majority of Iranians don't really speak English. And even when they speak English, saying vegan, that is a foreign word. And, language, our mother tongue, is very important. Just like food, language is part of our cultural identity. And I always wonder what happens when we are actually using a word that sounds foreign to people to promote an ideology that actually wants to change people's cultural foods. So I want to hear, if you have a word for vegan or veganism in your country and how people react to that. So shall we start again with Ellie?
Sure, thank you, Leila. So it's interesting you said that because we have a very similar situation in Japan as well. So the word vegan has been imported as it is in English. So people call it vegan or veganism. But we do have we basically in Japan we have 3 different characters, and we use one of the characters for foreign words, and veganism is spelled with this foreign word character. So people consider it as a Western ideology or a foreign idea, basically. We do have translation in Japanese, but it translates as absolute veg eater as well. So it's very similar to what you said. So it only focuses on the eating, the diet aspect of the philosophy. It doesn't really contain the whole meaning of the philosophy behind it. And because it's considered as a foreign or Western idea, actually many young people or many people who are on social media who like the trend, they do follow the vegan diet sometimes out of trend because it's a nice Western diet. It's considered as a Western diet at the moment. But at the same time, many others resist the idea because it seems like a foreign idea. They feel like it has nothing to do with them. So that's one of the issues we have at the moment in Japan. Thank you.
That's very interesting. Like you say, some people actually follow it because it is a trend, but it will actually antagonize some people because it is a Western idea. Angel, how is it in Hong Kong? I know it's probably not the same as in China, but let's talk about Hong Kong.
Sure. Again, I do also think this is a great question. In Hong Kong, like I said, we speak Cantonese. So in Cantonese, vegan is usually translated as sun, so which means pure vegetarian or like complete vegetarian. Again, it's mostly a word to describe the dietary preference. There is a lack of word to like encompass veganism as a social movement. And apart from this word, because of the influence of Buddhism, which is a major religion in places like Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan, and some other Asian countries as well, there are a variety of terms that describe like different categories of plant-based eatings. For example, there's a term that describes a type of vegetarian diet which excludes certain types of plants, because in Buddhism, these plants would sort of increase your certain desires, which is not ideal according to the Buddhist belief. So to sum up, again, there is a lack of term that gets the essence of veganism, and the current terms that we have in Cantonese is not really understood by the public or the industry, for example, like restaurants. So it is also a struggle for us here.
Yes, and it is interesting that, as Ellie mentioned as well, veganism is not just about food. It's a lifestyle, it's an ideology, and if we don't have a terminology for it, how are we going actually to promote it? Alia, how does the situation look in Pakistan?
It's pretty much similar when it comes to the language use. We have to understand that Pakistan is predominantly a Muslim country, and the term that is used for the closest I would say to vegan or vegan plant-based diet is the term shakahari or sabzi khor, which is a relevantly new term. But shakahari is coming in from pre-Islamic times. So it's there is an inbuilt bias towards that term. So somehow over the time, culturally it has been accepted that if you don't eat meat, you might not be a good Muslim within this cultural context. I'm not saying everyone believes that, but that's how the majority perception has become. So there is no such term, I would say. And if you look at vegan, then again, it is looked at as an elitist, as a Western foreign thing that has come to invade their country. So I totally agree with Ellie when she said that, if there's no term, how can we work on this ideology and movement? So there's a lack of awareness towards the idea of what veganism actually describes or what it beholds. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And Abzi, when you said Sabzikhor, I understand that. And that is just like a plant eater, and it doesn't even just say what that really means. And I think a lot of people don't understand what actually plant food is. And that is again like kind of, then it comes the question about honey. Can I have honey? Or honey, it's just honey, why can't you have it? Anyway, it's very interesting. Simo, what about Arabic?
So I think it's something is like Eli. So we have term is nabati. It just means just for food. We can nabati exclude just vegan and vegetarian, flexitarian, etc. So it's not a term for vegan in Arabic. We have a friend from Syria. It's Dr. I think Sharbel Botil or something like that. Try to create a new term about vegan in Arabic country, but it doesn't work because this term it's khudri. Khudri is the same thing like vegetable. It's not the same. It's not the best explication about veganism, lifestyle, etc. So it doesn't work. We try with a lot of activists from MENA region to create a term to explain vegan as the best explication about veganism, lifestyle, compassion, but it's very difficult. So, but in Morocco, nabati it's just for food. It's come just trend in Morocco, lifestyle, Instagram. So, but it doesn't work because all of these influencers just make this for 2 or 4 months, just to focus to make this trend. And we have. I will explain later. Veganism in Morocco is very difficult, or North Africa, even MENA region, it's not easy to explain compassion because lots of things. For example, in Islam, they have explication about mercy for animals. It means halal. So halal, it's not good to explain compassion. So it's very difficult to explain compassion in Islam's countries because for them it's Islam or it's not a subject to discuss. It's not cannot be interpreted again because Quran said something. For example, it means it's not. Any person cannot make with you a discussion with a logical argument or something like that because they have confirmation bias about this explication. So it's very difficult. So for me, as an activist, I focus just for health or environment because environment aspect it's very common in Morocco. So because Morocco have lots of things about environment, about climate change. So we just focus because even though we have two parts, we have a challenge two challenge. We face it and are divided in two parts. First part it's political, and second one it's culture. So the political, it's Moroccan authority ban any street activity without any permission. So, for example, when you would like, for example, to make a cup of fruits, animals for viceless or something like that, it's illegal in Morocco. So we should to have permission. Permission have a long process. So all of activists avoid this process. So, and the second one, it's culture. In North Africa, especially, I can explain you with this plane with the. Okay, give me a second. Okay, okay. So, okay.
Do you have a presentation for us?
Yes. To explain this, as okay. So, so the first thing, for example, any in for example in Europe countries, for example, when you show watching a footage of slaughterhouse or something like that, it's shocking because they didn't know that before. So, but in North Africa, it's opposite of that. So, because let me give you an example. For example, when you go, any person go to buy, for example, chicken, it's you can find this in supermarket like that. So it's very easy to take it or buy it. But in North Africa, it's very difficult. Most of people buy chicken like this. It's chicken are selling live and slaughter in the front eyes, customers' eyes. So all of stage of this process, it's normal in North Africa, because the side of compassion of animal is not influential aspects to be to be uh, activist there. So, for example, this footage, it's normal in normalized in North Africa. It's not good to make, for example, cup of truth and give this footage to explain, to raise awareness or something like that, because it's normal. So compassion, it doesn't work for this people. So but as I told you, it's in Morocco we just focus on health and environment, because Morocco, it's leader of climate change in the world. For example, according to National Geography, Morocco, the only country to plan to reduce carbon emission or something like that, because they have North, its power station, biggest power station, solar station in the world. So so we can we focalize just for environments, climate change, health. So that's why, because compassion is doesn't work there with this people. And Islam, even Islam, Eid Adha, because Eid Adha, it's not good for animals, but in this MENA region or Islamic culture, it's a day of celebration. So it's very complicated to explain. So that's it. I will so that's it.
Thank you, Sima. I think me and Elia probably can really relate to some of the things you were, talking about. I grew up in Iran, for the first few years, and also, as a teenager, I used to go back and visit, and I actually ate a lot. I'm going to talk about that. But first, I want to actually to kind of build on that and talk about the role of Islam and the challenges that some countries just face because of the Islam. Elia, do you want to talk about that? How it is in Pakistan?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So basically, if we look at Islam as a religion, as an ideology, I think there is a lot of talk about compassion and being Rahman and Rahim, to take care of whatever is around you, to be more compassionate to living things and people around you. But sadly, I think that because of Pakistan's colonial past, and because of an imperial and colonized and the capitalist system that has become so ingrained in the culture, that you somehow cannot extract compassion out of religion anymore. So they try to I'm not going to talk about religion as religion, but I'm going to talk about what people have made it into. So because I'm a Muslim, so I believe it's the people who change the things. So it's that way. And if we look at it, even with killing an animal, they will justify it by feeding the poor, whereas we don't look at things like why we can feed the poor a lot of plants as well. We don't have to feed them meat. They might be good for them, but we have to see where the leather is going. It's going to the local mosques who are benefiting from it, and then these bigger factories that are connected to it, and then there's a whole export system that's benefiting from each and every killing. So it's not as simple as just a religious ideology. It's so connected with capitalism and imperialism. So it's very difficult to separate that. I don't know if I've answered you correctly.
No, you did. And I find it quite interesting because even before going vegan, when they do the killing and they have to distribute the meat, I always thought something is wrong here, because the meat is given to the local people, not to the poor, not to those who are really in need of food. And again, and I think it is about the interpretation. I'm not going to go into the talking about Islam and how to interpret that. That is outside of the scope of this panel discussion. But I think it just shows the barriers we are facing. And as you mentioned, again, it goes back to the question that people feel like eating meat is essential, and it's almost like it is essential, like a part of the religion, not just essential for health, and which just makes it a very complex issue. And yes, thank you. I can definitely relate to what you're saying and totally agree with you. Now, what about other challenges you face? Ellie, do you want to talk about the challenges that people in Japan and activists in Japan face?
Sure, thank you, Leila. So maybe building up on what you have shared about religion, we do have similar challenges as well in terms of religion in Japan, even though not many people identify themselves as religious in Japan, unlike in Pakistan, for example. But the idea of Shintoism and Buddhism are quite deeply ingrained in our culture as well, and the values that people hold. And especially when it comes to Shintoism, there's this belief about animism. It's an ancient belief that all beings have spirits. So the whole point of that was really to pay respect to all beings. But at the moment, against veganism, it's kind of being appropriated to argue against veganism by saying plants have lives and feelings as well. So why do we only care about animals? We can just eat everything and appreciate their lives. So that's the kind of argument that's being appropriated against veganism based on the animism belief. So that's one of the religious elements against veganism. And also, yeah, there are so many different cultural challenges in Japan as well, but to share a few, I think there's a general lack of critical thinking in education system in Japan. So I grew up in Japan, and in the classroom, you're not really supposed to question the teachers. So like it was a very big culture shock for me when I moved to UK, because the teachers would ask my opinion about something in the classroom, and I was like, why does that matter? Why do I have to have an opinion? So that I think that's quite general in Japan, that people are not used to question the authority or question the norm or what's being normalized. So that's probably playing a role in stopping the veganism from spreading, because the norm at the moment is to eat animals, to exploit animals for our use, which actually comes mostly from the Western influence after the war. So even the animal agriculture process is quite new practice in Japan after the war. So I think it's time that we have to re-educate ourselves and unlearn about these new practices, because actually it's a new practice, and we can remember we have to re-educate ourselves about how it used to be, instead of just following the Western trend at the moment, I think. Another cultural aspect in Japan is that it's super capitalistic, as you all probably know. So veganism is definitely seen as a business opportunity for a lot of corporations. And especially with the 2020 Olympics that happened this year, it was seen as a business opportunity to capture the interest of tourists from overseas. So it was almost kind of considered as a foreign ideology or foreign diet. Again, that has nothing to do with people in Japan, but we have to offer vegan options because people are coming from overseas. So I feel like capitalism has taken over veganism before the actual philosophy has, the idea has spread enough in Japan. Let me just go over my notes. Yeah, so as I said earlier, I think what we need to do in Japan at the moment, I feel like, is to we have to start acknowledging what's being internalized after the war, like white supremacy, Western culture superiority, the way we eat, the way we relate to animals and the nature. It's very new in Japan, so we have to acknowledge that it's a new idea. It's just been internalized, and we have to empower ourselves with the actual traditional values to respect all lives, because that's the value that Shintoism, Buddhism originally had. Instead of appropriating these ideas to argue against veganism, we can re-educate ourselves with these values, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And I actually, again, I think it is, there are some, similarities between all of us, our countries. What you mentioned, that, it is in all of the countries, it's seen as this Western ideology. And again, it does attract a few people, but I don't think it would actually attract the majority of people. It just attracts a minority of people, and mostly people who are well off, who do speak English, who do actually have access to social media and all these things. And obviously, we don't just want to speak to a minority group. We want to actually talk to the whole nation. And I see the same in Iran. Sometimes it's just because I'm not from a privileged background, so my family, my relatives in Iran are not from a privileged background. And when I see all these Iranian vegans on Instagram, what they are posting, what they are doing in Iran, and I just think, my relatives in Iran, they couldn't do that. They couldn't afford that. So I know that what you are saying would never speak to actually my own relatives, who know that I am vegan. So, and I just think as we mentioned earlier, just along the word vegan doesn't exist. And that is, one, the first barrier maybe. And then the cultural idea that, it is something what the West does. And yes, it is quite complicated and complex. And but that is why we are having these conversations. Now, Angel, how about Hong Kong? because I follow a few people in Hong Kong, and you see all these different restaurants, plant-based restaurants, and I just think, gosh, I mean, when I was in Hong Kong, I wasn't vegan. I wish I would go back to Hong Kong now, that I would enjoy all these vegan food. So how is the situation in Hong Kong? Any challenges?
Sure, there are definitely, but before I go into it, please let me know if you ever come back to Hong Kong again. There are some challenges specific to Hong Kong, and I want to just quickly respond to what some of you have just said. I think, Simo, what you said about people or like violence against animals quite normal in your country, I can definitely relate, because in Hong Kong, and I believe in a lot of other Asian countries as well, like live slaughter is quite common. There are like live or wet markets. So I did grow up visiting these markets, and it's just very normalized. You can also even see them in supermarkets as well. There are like sections where you have live fishes, and people actually slaughtering, like preparing animal products in front of you. So we have that in Hong Kong as well. And then what you said, Ellie, just now about people not really questioning the status quo, again, I can relate. I grew up in the public education system in Hong Kong, and I was I was used to being spoon-fed a lot of information instead of actually questioning or like being critical in my thinking. So I think that's another barrier here in Hong Kong. But I think one potential solution would be changing the environment, make it more vegan friendly, or for more people to be able to exercise their compassion before or while changing their individual beliefs, because there are so many challenges to changing a person's belief. But I think changing beliefs and changing actions, behaviors can go hand in hand, or they complement each other. And I just want to quickly mention another challenge specific to Hong Kong, and that's around the political situation here. So specifically, tactics like civil disobedience might not be the best, because since the pro-democracy movement in 2019, this form of activism has become, or has been interpreted as ugly in some way. So the general public might have reservations around participating in actions that might jeopardize or put their jobs, careers, or even personal safety in danger. So this is not like you can feel it in the society. This might not be like openly discussed about, but you can definitely see that participation in certain forms of actions are not as high as one would like. So that's something unique to Hong Kong.
Thank you. Very interesting again. And what you said about the wet market, and we have this festival of sacrifice in Islam. And I remember when I was still a child, actually, my family, just because my father was like the first son of the family or whatever, they had to buy a sheep and kill it there and then distribute the meat among their relatives. And I had to watch, and I didn't like it, but I felt like, okay, I have to. I wouldn't say it was expected, from me that I watch it, but it was just the way it was. You don't question it. You just take it for granted. And that's why, these cubes of truth, which we have, like in the UK and, in the US, wouldn't work in those countries, because people have already seen all of that. They would probably question, why are you showing me that? Why do you think I should actually care? So we have to kind of change our narrative and come from a different angle. And Simo mentioned health, and I think maybe actually bringing up the health reasons or taking that as a first step might actually work in those countries better. I don't know. I'm not saying that I have the solutions and the answers. I'm just wondering. Now, we don't have any questions in the comments, which is good. That gives us more time to actually talk about, things. And actually, what I want to talk about is, in a recent interview, I was asked how the West can actually help other countries to increase the development of veganism. And I actually responded that, I was a doctor for a long time. So I think maybe that's my medical background. It's like, first, do no harm. So that's for me always like kind of just don't do any harm. That's a good step. And my answer was that, the vegans in the West, they should just not, stop doing any harm with their anti-Asian and anti-Islam sentiments. Like, whenever there is the Yulin Dog Meat Festival in China or the Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice in Muslim countries, I see a lot of anti-China and anti-Islam sentiments on social media. And I think criticizing a whole country, a whole nation, and calling them names, it is not going to help the movement. It is actually going to antagonize the people in those countries. And it will make them feel like, yes, it is a white West idea. We don't want him. They don't like us anyway. So why should we actually be open to the idea of veganism? So now I want to put the same question to you. How do you think that vegans in the West, vegan organizations in the West, can actually help you and your organizations to spread veganism in your countries? So let's start this time with Simo. Let's start from Morocco and go up to Japan. You need to unmute yourself.
So for me, it's we should to support each other to make, for example, a global event monthly or each every year. So I think it's the best idea to raise awareness all of because, for example, in Morocco, in North Africa, we have a just association, our association, the only community in North Africa. So it's not doesn't work to bring or to raise awareness all in North Africa. So we need a lot of organization to exchange this experience or something like that. It's very useful and very important for animal activists or vegan activists. So I think this is the best idea for me to develop ourselves, to raise awareness or to develop this lifestyle in the world or something like that.
Thank you. I like that, exchanging ideas, and what works in one country might work in the other country, especially when it comes when you talk about Muslim countries. There are some similarities. It's not all like kind of, you are a different country. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. The postman has just come. So I'm just going to, ask Elia to talk about, what she thinks, how the vegans in the West can help you.
Yeah, because to be honest, there is no such vegan movement in Pakistan at the moment. It's literally at its very basic inception stage. So it would be really helpful if activists from all over the world can actually keep an eye on what is also happening in Pakistan. One more thing I would like to connect it with, I say this whoever I speak to at any panel, is that we celebrate wins in the West that, they've shut down dairy farms, they've shut down this. But where is all of that machinery and all of those cows going? They're coming to the developing world. They're setting up their factory farms here with secondhand machinery that's being imported. So I would suggest that with every win, if these people could also, in the West, the people in the West could keep an eye on what is happening in the developing world, because we are now going to be colonized by food, colonized through food again by having their factory farms being set up here. And in the past 3-4 years, I've personally researched and seen that there have been a massive increase in factory farming in Pakistan, which was not as common as before. And you see that link happening. So we would want that, like they put a pressure there, they also keep an eye here and help us grow that movement so that it doesn't become a norm here. So that would be my request for Pakistan.
You actually raised such an important issue that, because I always feel like, whenever we here in the West, oh yes, the dairy consumption has reduced and this is happening, people are eating less meat. And I just think, yes, but in other countries, that is not happening. So when we look at the whole picture, nothing has changed for the animals. And especially what you just said, that is shocking. That actually, yes, a factory farm, like they are shutting down here in the UK, in the US, or wherever, but they are taking it actually somewhere else, which it is cheaper probably for them. So again, the capitalism is coming, into play. And I think it is so important that Ellie mentioned critical thinking. We need actually to use that and ask ourselves questions. Yes, we are making this progress maybe in the West, in the UK. But let's face it, the West is such a small percentage compared to the rest of the world. So we cannot forget the rest of the world. Thank you for bringing that up. So Angel, what about Hong Kong?
Thanks, Leila. Yeah, that was a great point, Alia. I haven't really considered that. I think building up on that, because so many animals are raised in Asia or in the global South, I think one general point is to just elevate local voices and trying to share and support the work of individuals or groups that are already doing the work, especially in the global South. And I think similar to your do no harm principle, if organizations or groups, individuals in the West do want to do something, I think before expanding to a country, I would suggest trying to connect with the local community first and try to understand and see what they think they need, what the locals need, and because they probably have better knowledge of what works and what doesn't. So that's my input.
I totally agree. And actually, in that interview, what I said is that we don't need another white savior, because I think it would be so wrong for the West, for a Western organization to go and say, okay, I actually understand what Hong Kong needs, for example, what Pakistan needs, and comes there says, okay, I think because again, going back to the fact that there isn't actually a word for veganism in those countries. Now, and it is seen as a Western ideology. If a white person comes, somebody from the West comes and says, I'm going to actually teach you about it, people are not going to be open to it. And I totally agree. If anybody wants to help, they need to do it with the locals. And they should really do it in the background. That is my opinion. I think, the locals should be in the foreground. They should actually move the movement, lead the movement. They should be actually being the leaders. And yes, maybe they need financial help, from the West, or just even some, exchanging ideas and sharing thoughts, and just getting support. Even some emotional support would help, obviously. But definitely the locals should be the ones who are actually leading the movement. I totally agree. Ellie, what about Japan?
Thank you, Leila. Yeah, I definitely agree with everything everyone else said as well. And I do think a panel discussion like this that you organized today is extremely important. And so thank you so much for this opportunity. I think there should be a lot more opportunities to amplify the voices of global majority activists and increase the exposure for ourselves in the current movement, and so that we can take more of a leadership in the movement. And yeah, I would just say it could be a repeat of what everyone said, but just keep in mind that what works in the West might not always work in many other countries in the global majority world, because of the complexity of historical background, cultural diversity within the country itself as well. Like a small example could be food. Like it's great to see Instagram worthy, beautiful looking superfood salad and pancakes, vegan pancakes, but that might not seem accessible to the majority of people in Japan, for example, and that's why there's a lot of resistance. So I think there's a big need for accessible food for the majority of people in Asia. And also, yeah, we do have Animal Advocacy Conference Asia coming soon in November, and we have a Japanese speaker talking about Taiji dolphin hunt issues in Japan, and he's actually going to be talking about the challenges of international pressure versus the local campaigns, and how the Americanized campaigns don't always work very well with the local dolphin hunters. So yeah, please check it out if you're interested in this topic as well. We actually had a speaker from.
If you have the link, or if Angel has the link, could you actually post it? Then Pete can share it with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the conference, yes.
We had a speaker called Ahmed from Palestine last year at our conference as well, and he talked about white saviorism and how Western intervention sometimes didn't work very well in Palestine as well. So yeah, and that's on YouTube as well. So please check it out as well. And the last thing I would mention is to be aware probably about the different phase or stage of the movement in different countries in Asia. In the UK, for example, the movement has been growing over decades, but in some other countries, it's quite new. So at the moment in Japan, for example, it's pretty much a single issue movement. And I do think there has to be a lot more consideration about human rights aspects as well within the movement, because of the cultural issues such as the slaughterhouse workers being discriminated against for centuries. So there's a lot of cultural aspects that need to be considered. We can't just import the campaign ideas from the West and do exactly the same thing in Japan. We have to be mindful of such cultural aspect when we tackle these issues as well. Thank you.
It was really interesting to listen to all of you. And I think one of the reasons I wanted actually to do this panel discussion is because, as I said, we want a vegan world. So we have to actually listen to each other. I mean, somebody in the UK might say, okay, I don't care what is happening in Asia, but we should care, because if we care for the, about the animals, if we really say that we want, to save all the animals, then we need to care about all the animals everywhere. And humans are actually really, the ones who are doing the work. And also, I think another issue we don't have time to actually discuss that is that we do have people from those countries living in the West. And even when we are trying to actually promote veganism to those people, from China, Hong Kong, Japan, Pakistan, Middle East, Morocco, from the Arabic countries, we need to be aware of the cultural barriers and cultural understanding of veganism. So I think that is another reason why vegans in the West would actually benefit from actually listening to you and actually coming to your conference. I'm looking forward to the conference. I think it is really important. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. And anything else, anyone, we have 2 minutes. Anything you want to share, any last words? Okay, if that's it, then I'll just wrap it up. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.